Hello everyone, I am Jason Bicano from Bohol Island State University, Kandahay Campus. So I'm going to present to you my study entitled Implementation of Solid Waste and Wastewater Management of Beach Resorts in Anda, Bohol, Philippines. Beach pollution by solid waste is a global phenomenon. Studies related to the solid waste contamination of beaches have been completed in many countries and illustrate the diverse character of this sort of pollution, which includes plastics, nylon, polystyrene, organic debris, glass, metals, and paper items. Solid waste contaminations and accumulations on beaches are closely related to both human intervention and natural variables. Beaches are natural resource, and their exploitation as a tourist attractions generates demand for services, jobs, and income for local and planned urban developments and population growth in urban centers close to the seashore lead to degradation of coastal environments through contamination by solid or non-biodegradable waste and domestic sewage. Although there is a consensus on the necessity of monitoring solid waste pollution in the aquatic environments, the methods applied in a qualitative and quantitative study vary widely, even among works with similar objectives. These differences have resulted in a large amount of assessment methods of beach contamination by solid waste, therefore creating, testing, and recommending a method that only allows comparisons of places and periods, but also the detection of sources signals will be important to reach the objectives of the source prevention principle. This will also allow the optimization of time, resources, and processing of samples and data. Moreover, it is also claimed that with the rapid growth of tropical beach resorts, it is claimed that all tourism stakeholders should play a role in helping sustainability to be achieved. Prior studies posited that the ideal situation for achieving what is desired would be to get everyone to move in the same direction, and it can be done through the management of the organization via performance management. However, there are limited studies in the area of beach resorts. Thus, this study aims to explore how the management of beach resort on the east coast of Anda, Bohol, Philippines manage its performance. So the study explores the strategies used by this beach resort which managed to sustain the business for the last 25 years and explores beach resorts operations that assist beach resorts to sustain themselves in the industry and examines the implementation and contribution to the management of beach resorts in Anda, Bohol as to date and how it can further provide assistance for beach resorts to continue to flourish and sustain the industry. So this study aims to determine the extent of implementation of solid waste and wastewater management of beach resorts in Anda, Bohol, Philippines, calendar year 2021. The findings of this study serves as basis for devising a sustainable beach tourism development and management model. Specifically, this study sought answers to the profile of the respondents, the extent of implementation of solid waste and wastewater management in the beach resorts, and the significant relationship between the respondents' profile and their perceptions of the extent of implementation of solid waste and wastewater management in the beach resorts. This study was conducted in Anda, Bohol, where it is situated in the east coast of the island, roughly 110 kilometers or 3 hours ride from Tagbilaran City, in which many neighboring resorts are located. There were 20 beach resorts or establishments were involved in the study. Statistical tools were used in the study. Frequency count and percentage were used to analyze and interpret the profile of the respondents. Weighted mean is used to analyze and interpret how the beach resorts manage the different kind of wastes. And chi-square test of independence was used to determine the significant relationship between the extent of implementation of solid waste and wastewater management and the respondents' profile. So now we are in results and discussion of the study. This part shows the data on the profile of the respondents, which includes their age, sex, civil status, highest educational attainment, and occupation. So the highest proportion of the respondents belong to the age bracket of 40 years old and above. On the other hand, there were only few or 10% of respondents who were aged 35 to 39 years old. Concerning the sex, the data shows that more than 3/4 or 80% of the respondents were females, which males comprise only 20%. This data implies that the females nowadays are taking the higher management level of beach resorts, unlike several decades ago wherein such positions are mostly assigned to male managers. In terms of civil status of the respondents, more than two-thirds of the respondents, or 70% of the total number of respondents, were singles, and almost one-third, or 30%, were married. The highest proportion of the respondents, or 65%, were college graduates. On the other hand, there was only 1 or 5% who had vocational course. This personnel was hired by the management due to one's long years of experience in running a resort and exceptional expertise in technical skills that are required in the hospitality operations. In terms of occupation of the respondents, majority or 55% or comprising of 11 respondents were general managers of the beach resorts. There was only one respondent comprising of only 5% was the purchase chief officer. This employee was chosen to be the representative of this study since he has the vast knowledge on the overall operations of the beach resorts. This part displays the data on the responses of the representative of the beach resorts in Bohol on the extent of implementation of solid waste and wastewater management. So the table 2 presents the results on the assessment of the beach resorts operators pertaining to the extent of implementation of solid waste management as to waste minimization in the area of accommodation, food and beverage, and also in the administrative and office functions. So let's start with the accommodation. The highest weighted mean of 3.80 reveals that in the aspect of accommodation at the beach resorts, there was high implementation of the policy of extending the lifespan of equipment by having it serviced or maintained regularly. On the other hand, there is a lowest weighted mean of 2.75 indicates that there was only moderate implementation in the policy of using partially used items from guest rooms at the employees' restrooms or donating for charitable purpose. In addition, the highest weighted mean of 3.60 in the area of food and beverage shows that the resort management highly implemented the policy of using refillable containers for items like sugar, salt, pepper, flour, soda, syrup, and cream. This means that in many cases, the management of the resorts discouraged the usage of sachet or any single-use plastics like wrappers of food and beverage, condiments, and other supplies that will become useless when the contents are loaded to the containers. The lowest mean of 2.50 specifies that the resort management moderately implemented the policy of donating unused food to local food banks or other charitable organization. Furthermore, in the administrative and office functions, the highest weighted mean of 3.45 shows that the resort management highly implemented the policy of using bulletin boards for memos, pamphlets, and brochures instead of circulating hard copies to all employees in the area of administrative and office functions. On the other hand, the lowest mean of 2.20 shows that the resort management less implemented the policy of donating old computers and equipment to schools or charities. So now let's proceed to the extent of implementation of solid waste management as to waste reuse in the area of accommodation. The highest weighted mean of 3.40 shows that the resort management moderately implemented the policy of reusing waste paper as telephone answering pads or notes. However, the lowest mean of 2.30 shows that the resort management less implemented the policy of use donating soap and toiletries to local charities. In terms of food and beverage, the highest weighted mean of 3.60 indicates that the resort management highly implemented the policy of having old appliances repaired or rebuilt. It denotes that the beach resorts were maintaining the good working condition of their appliances and avoid purchasing new items without trying to fix the problem of the appliances first. So this is their way of reducing the budget allocated to purchasing kitchen utensils and equipment if the existing ones can still be repaired. The lowest weighted mean of 2.80 On the other hand, denotes that the resort management moderately implemented a policy of donating old utensils and kitchenware to employees or charities, as well as contacting local recyclers or to identify items or areas in which they are interested. In terms of open spaces and grounds, the highest weighted mean of 3.25 indicates that the resort management highly implemented the policy of recycling motor oils, antifreeze, paints, etc. used by groundskeeping and maintenance staff, as well as phasing out the use of hazardous materials whenever possible. On the other hand, the lowest weighted mean of 1.90 specifies that the resort management less implemented the policy of donating healthy plants to community gardens, parks, and schools. Now for Table 4, extent of implementation of wastewater management. The highest weighted mean of 3.90 shows the management of the beach resorts highly implemented the policy of regularly checking of the water system for any leaks or any cause of surges in consumption. Nevertheless, the lowest weighted mean of 3.65 still denotes that the management of the resorts highly implemented the policy of monitoring the water use system. This results relates to the previous findings that the beach resorts operators applied the practice of checking the level of water consumptions to ensure that the water bill is within the usual consumption level and accounting budget. So the aggregate mean of 3.79 in terms of conservation of water, the highest weighted mean of 3.70 denotes that the management of the resort highly implemented the policy of filling washing machines to capacity to reduce the numbers of loads and saves water. It denotes that the beach resorts operators are strictly imposing the standard operating procedures to all laundry staff to load the maximum capacity of soiled linens to the washing machines to minimize the number of loads to reduce water and electric consumption. The lowest weighted mean of 3.05, on the other hand, reveals that the resort management moderately implemented a policy of applying water-saving measures in tourism facilities that have any water-intensive activities. In the era of the high operating costs, especially water and electricity, business entities will really adopt various means of reducing the consumptions of utilities like water. Although in this context, the beach resorts failed to fully adopt effective means of saving water in its operations, especially those involving guests and customers. And lastly, the reusing of wastewater. The highest weighted mean of 3.45 denotes that the management of the highly implemented the policy of ensuring that the wastewater from the bathrooms, sinks, and kitchens has less toxicity, good reuse potential, uses minimal treatment, and are separated into one stream. On the other hand, the lowest weighted mean of 2.90 reveals that the management of the resort moderately implemented the policy of hiring wastewater expert that provides the technical guide on the proper management of wastewater for water conservation. For the Table 5, extent of implementation of solid waste and wastewater management in the beach resorts. There was only moderate implementation on solid waste management as to waste minimization by the resorts in Andabohol. This means that the resorts had not fully followed and complied the provisions of the Solid Waste Management Act, since there were really processes and procedures in the operations that they cannot do away with throwing the unused items to ensure that their guests are satisfied and they were able to maintain their good image in the market. Further, there was only moderately implemented or implementations pertaining to solid waste management as to waste reuse. This results indicates that the management of the resorts were not able to make use of the other unconsumed supplies, old machines and equipment, and others. Instead, they threw them as a garbage. However, this kind of practice was only minimal, since in many instances they were conserving their assets to the full usage as much as possible. So the overall aggregate mean of 3.49 indicates that the resort management highly implemented wastewater management in its overall operations. This means that they observe strict monitoring of water use, water conservation, and reusing of wastewater for other usage. Table 6, significant relationship between respondents' profile and their perceptions on the extent of implementation of solid waste and wastewater management of beach resort. In the aspect of waste minimization, there is no significant relationship between respondents' profile and their perceptions on the extent of implementation of the solid waste management of beach resorts. However, there is a significant relationship between the civil status of the respondents and their perception of the extent of implementation of solid waste management as to waste reuse. Based on the computed chi-square value of 7.897, which is higher than the critical value of the 7.815. Hence, the null hypothesis is rejected. This means that the respondent's civil status has influence on their views on the implementation of the solid waste management of beach resorts. Moreover, married and single managers or executives in the resorts differed significantly on their ideas on the reduction of waste through recycling or making the unused and old items of use to the employees and the community for charitable purposes. Married employees were more concerned on how to conserve the assets of the organization since they are particular with the budgeting compared to single employees who do not usually have familiar financial obligations. In the aspect of wastewater management, there is also no significant relationship between respondents' profile and their perceptions on the extent of implementation of the wastewater management of beach resort. So we're now in conclusion. This study shows that the resort uses various strategies to manage and ensure its sustainability in the establishment. The government, through the local department of the tourism, can help to derive policies that are friendlier towards accessing capital, especially in the early stage of resorts growth. This would facilitate better planning and execution at the ground level. Professional hiring and training of resorts employees can also be achieved. This would ensure that the sustainability of the resorts and the tourism industry in the long run. So all parties, such as the NGOs, local communities, and private sectors, must put efforts and work into contributing the development of the island. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.